A lot of my videos have shared my process and some of the tips that I go through when I draw, but the one thing that I want to talk about today is what makes a good composition, or the secrets that I use when selecting a scene to draw. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, I like to sketch a lot of different subjects, and especially when I'm practicing, it really doesn't matter what's in front of me. I'm just learning how to navigate the paper and the pen. But there are times that a certain scene might grab me. And the reason it does is because it usually has one of the following elements that I'm going to talk about. And these are the things that I look for in a scene to craft that perfect urban sketch. First, does it have strong shapes or silhouettes? Now, before anything else, I look for bold, simple shapes that define my scene. Strong roof lines, tree canopies, street lamps, buildings' edges, all of that. These are all visual anchors. When a scene has a strong silhouette, it holds up, even when simplified down to a sketch. That's vital because sketching isn't about copying what you see. It's about rendering a suggestion of the scene. Now, one thing that I might try to do is to squint my eyes a little to blur that scene. Now, when I do that, you can kind of see whether or not that scene is going to read clearly and have some visually interesting elements. And if it does, it's likely to work out as a good sketch. The other thing that I like to look at are the angles of all the lines in my scene. For example, things that are in perspective tend to be more interesting. Now, as I look for these angles, I'm looking for a mixture of diagonal lines mixed with straight lines. If you get that, you tend to have a great start for a potential sketch. Angled lines can really help lead your viewer's eyes all around your page, creating a sense of engagement with your sketch. Now, I like to select scenes with a strong perspective since they naturally create those dynamic angled lines. Now, another one is the simplicity factor. Can the scene be broken down and simplified? Oftentimes, overly detailed sketches can look very chaotic. So I tend to look for scenes that I know can be simplified into basic components and still maintain that essence of the original scene. This part does take practice, but oftentimes the suggestion of detail and texture can go much farther than actually drawing out every little item. Now the next one is balance. The scene should have a sense of balance. Now, I'm not talking about symmetry. For example, in this sketch, I have a detailed building front that will be balanced by a tree on the right, giving the scene a more satisfying appearance. Okay, the next one is depth and layers. A good urban scene often has multiple layers, a foreground layer, a midground, and maybe some background elements. This depth gives the sketch dimension and keeps the eye moving. What I look for is there a tree in the foreground or a telephone pole? In this case, there's both. Do elements appear to come forward, such as the awnings off of a building front, or are there ledges that jut out? Overlapping objects and perspective lines, especially when those converging toward a vanishing point, they can help create a believable scene with just a few marks. The next one is texture. This is a very powerful way to create more interesting sketches. Finding scenes that have a little bit of texture that you're able to add to your sketches oftentimes breaks up flat, open areas and gives the viewers places to explore by providing another level of contrast to your sketch. Now, adding too much texture can be overwhelming. For example, I have chosen to include the brick texture as well as the garage texture on the front of this building. And to balance out the sketch, I'm going to also imply some of the texture in the tree as well. But that's all I need. Okay, the next is dynamic values, and what I'm referring to are the light and shadows. Oftentimes, scenes that have clear differences between the sides of the buildings tend to work better. One bathed in light and one hidden in shadows. This contrast can be naturally satisfying. Also, long casted shadows like the ones that this telephone makes can create more interest. Now, if I'm not drawing in color and I'm sticking to just a black and white sketch, these shadows are clues to where I can add some hatching. The next one is finding scenes with little pops of color. When used selectively, a pop of color can create an emphasis. It can add emotion, it can even act as a focal point. I often look for scenes that have a small amount of bold color in them. And what I'll do is I'll leave most of the sketch to stay muted, the grays, neutrals, light washes, etc., then strategically use that bold color in one or two areas to draw the eye. Now, you don't need to capture every color accurately. Sometimes exaggerating the color or shifting the color a little bit, maybe by making a green tree more yellow to contrast a blue sky, all of this can create a stronger sketch. And lastly, and probably the most important, is finding scenes that allow you to add your own style. A perfectly executed sketch may look impressive, but it's those imperfections or personal decisions that each artist makes, whether intentional or accidental, that really creates a unique style within the sketch. These imperfections make the sketch feel more alive and handcrafted. Okay, I hope you've got some insight on how I go about picking some of my scenes. Now, if you already haven't, please give this video a like and subscribe.